going through that process, I think learning to sort of reevaluate and reassess when you're engaging people, I think has been an important lesson for me.
Welcome to the Leadership Initiative, where we explore the art and science of leadership through thought-provoking conversations with experts, thought leaders, and change makers. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting out on your leadership journey, this podcast is designed to provide you with the tools and inspiration you need to lead with purpose and make a meaningful difference.
All right, let's go ahead and switch topics. You've alluded to this when you talked about the changes that are going to be announced about One FedEx as a company. So I'm mindful of when I tell my undergraduate and graduate students that while we think of entrepreneurship as starting a new venture, an entrepreneurial culture can and must exist everywhere, including within a well-established going concern. So how do you nurture a corporate entrepreneurial culture within your organization at FedEx?
Yeah, so again, this is just a fantastic topic, and it really goes and starts with our chairman and founder, Mr. Fred Smith. I mean, he created an industry, and he's an icon and a very visionary type personality for sure. And that's the example of just being creative and innovative and creating something new. But when you have an organization that I've already mentioned is now 50 years old, things change and you have to adapt. The markets change, your business change, your workforce and labor environment changes. And, a company that's not changing continuously really gets ran over at the end of the day. So that is part of it, creativity and innovation. Matter of fact, innovation is one of our 7 shared corporate values. And there are different forms of innovation. Some of it could be just process improvement. And you mentioned QDM at the beginning. Quality-driven management is sort of our philosophy in how we continuously process improve and look at our business problems differently. And sort of work back from it. And just the easiest example is we may run 98% on-time service on any given day, but there's 2% of 14 million packages that are not being delivered on time. So how do you look at those 2% and focus on root cause and how you can improve? That's a different form of continuously recreating yourself, but that's just about process improvement. Being able to sense market condition changes, and you can go all the way back to 1999, 2000, shortly after the acquisition of RPS, and RPS was a small parcel ground network that was being built, didn't cover all the zip codes across the entire U.S. at that time. We were still expanding, but our chairman had that vision to say, hey, we need to get into this small parcel because this thing called e-commerce is about ready to explode. So just being able to see that ahead of time is one attribute to what he's been able to do and the other leadership team members at the time. But you build this major network out for e-commerce, which is what we did with the ground network. And it's just being prepared to be able to service that market. It's not quite there yet, but we know it's coming. So it's how you create and sort of reinvent your approach to the business is very important. I'll sort of flip it to the leadership side. I think it's very important from a leadership standpoint to take the same innovative and recreation approach on it. You've got to reinvent yourself as a leader and how you take on these challenging business problems and how you engage your team members. So I think, innovation, it means a lot of different things within a large company. And I think you got to think about how you lead and how you sort of recreate yourself. I do it on an annual basis. I have a self-assessment, and you go through and you look at what am I doing right, what am I doing wrong, how should I change this up? Am I connecting with the team members, and how should I? You need to constantly reassess that. And I think the same thing in the business, core business, and what you're doing, and that's what we've done quite well over the years.
Mm-hmm. I really hear the importance of reflection, to not be comfortable and to not be satisfied that because you had a good year, next year is also going to be successful, because that's simply not true. I also am keenly aware, as a student of history, of business history, that the entire e-commerce revolution, changing the way that we shop and enjoy products today, would not have happened without FedEx. Let's be clear. So I get that. Now, as currently as president of FedEx Ground. When you look at how your organization is doing, there must be times when you say, hey, we're losing our competitive advantage here. We're not where the puck is going to be. And can a firm get too large to be able to change? And at what point do you have to reconfigure or reorganize in order to adapt, to shape shift, so that resting on the laurels doesn't happen, to go after what that next emerging challenge is?
Yeah, I will say we talk about this a lot because as your organization continues to grow and gets pretty expansive and large, one of the things you got to be careful of is not allowing bureaucracy to sort of weigh you down. And oftentimes in large organizations, the layers and layers of things that get added on tend to cause that. One of the things that we always really work hard to do, and particularly in the operating companies, it's even going to be more of a thing for us to be focused on as we become one FedEx, is you gotta think big, but say the right phrase here. I want to say operate small, but think big. But you want to keep things intact to where you can actually still be nimble and be able to respond quickly to changes in your market conditions or changes in things like your labor force. You've got to be nimble. And so, how you establish that within your organization is very, very important. Some companies, it's been the challenge for them and why some of them don't make it, because they do get too big and they have too many layers of processes and things you got to go through, and it slows them down or not able to respond quickly. So I think it is important to always be mindful of that, and I think that's something that FedEx has done quite well over the years. That continues to position us as a industry leader instead of a follower.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. I've noticed that you've been on an acquisition spree. I think you actually have a healthy history of acquisition. But if I look on what you've done since 2015, you acquired Genco, one of the largest third-party logistic providers in North America. In 2016, TNT Express, a smaller competitor. You acquired an R&D capability with Northwest Research in 2017. Leading up to the online e-commerce platform ShopRunner in 2020. So the big problem with mergers and acquisitions is, how do you create a culture from that still represents this is who we are, rather than a ragtag collection of independent companies that don't see themselves as one identity. They hold on to their former identity. And that typically, as I saw with my own company at Polycom, as I see as the ongoing challenge at a company like Cisco Systems, don't get that right, big trouble. So how, from a FedEx perspective, how has FedEx confronted leading employees through acquisitions like this, and then making sure that those acquisitions are successful over time?
Yeah, this is
the culture question.
This is a really, really great topic. This is one of the values that FedEx Express and the core of what I think the leadership team, starting with Fred, created. It was the culture. It's the people culture. And this culture of FedEx is so strong, and it's like a magnet. I mean, even through acquisition, people, once you see that culture, that's what you want to be a part of. I mean, we're on the Fortune hundreds list, and very high on those lists of places to work for, and it's been that way year in and year out, and it's a big focus. I mean, like I said earlier, we don't manufacture anything, so it's really about our people, and that's truly how FedEx has always been looked at. So through these acquisitions, and I'll give you my experience in 1997, and I just happened to be in probably the best position that anybody within the RPS organization could have been in. I had just got promoted in 1998 after the acquisition to go to Memphis, and I was a managing director of our Mississippi Valley region at the time. So I was responsible for all the pickup and delivery and hub operations in Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, and West Tennessee. But I was domiciled in Memphis. And that's when we started the rebranding initiatives to FedEx Ground from RPS. So I was there in the midst of it. I could actually see the culture that we were just becoming as an RPS organization and what we were stepping into with FedEx. And as soon as I saw it, I'm like, that's what I want, because it's absolute focus on people. You've got our shared values that are very aligned with the general population, because we want to provide service, right? And the focus is on people. It's about loyalty, it's about responsibility, and what we do with the customers' packages and how we take that on to provide the service. And it's just a part of the culture. And actually, our culture is people, service, profit, and that's the starting point for everything that Fred built, and it has been. And so, acquiring that culture as an acquired company is not a difficult thing to step into. It's something that it attracts people. There are challenges with it, because everybody wants to sort of keep their own identity a little bit, particularly when you still have operating companies. And I think it's healthy to a certain degree, because it creates the competitiveness, and you want to be prideful about things that you accomplished in the prior company. But bringing it together and how it comes together to make FedEx stronger is the bigger thing. So
I get that. I think that's a wonderful segue to go over and take a little bit of a tour about leadership explicitly. So let's start with you. Today, you lead 200,000 employees. I looked this up. 636 distribution hubs and local pickup and delivery stations, of which I use them. I use them probably once every couple of weeks, right? 92,000 motorized vehicles operated by 5,500 locally owned small businesses, and you transport 13 million packages on average a given day. That made me a little dizzy, just reciting those words. So as you look back over your career, what are some of the most valuable leadership lessons that have prepared you for today? And what do you think you got right?
Yeah, when you put it all in that perspective, it sort of freaks me out a little bit too, huh? So, it's really the team that I have assembled and around me that does the heavy lift is incredible, and it really is about people. It's about development of future leaders, and a lot of it's experiential, but you also to experience it, you also got to learn, right? And how you approach people and how you engage people. And we talked about reflection earlier, and I think it's important, and I do this regularly, and it's been a practice through my career in all the different roles I've had, and particularly as you're engaging more and more people. When I first started, it was a small work group of 5 or 6 people, and I wasn't even the boss. I was just a lead person. But you always want to try and create a better environment for your team, and that's sort of been the motivation for me all these years. And particularly in a culture that's not a FedEx people first culture that I grew up in early on, you're always wanting to try and make that environment a little bit better for the team that you can influence. And so when I got those opportunities to move up, that's something I learned, is that you can branch out or influence a larger group to make a difference. And one of the motivations I had, not knowing what I was doing at the time, taking on these opportunities that were provided, it was really just influence a larger group and trying to do things that we needed to do to change the environment. And that engagement of people was very, very important. And it's really just trying to make the situation better. And so going through that process, I think learning to sort of reevaluate and reassess when you're engaging people, I think has been an important lesson for me. And I do it often today. When I sit in front of a large group of people, I want to make sure I'm messaging appropriately and influencing appropriately and positively. And I step back afterwards and I assess myself and how did I do, and what did I get my point across? And sometimes you have to reach out to people and get feedback. And it's just a lesson, I think, over time that I've learned. It's been very helpful from a leadership standpoint and how you engage. As far as the business itself and the career track I've been on, early on, I was always a doer, and I just get in and you do things. And a lot of times you're not paying attention to the things that are going on outside of your space. And then understanding how it's connected to other parts of the business, I think, is very important. That's probably something early on that I missed, was not connecting those dots, and how what I was doing was influenced the bigger, broader portions of the business. And when I got to become director in a larger area of the country and then eventually an officer, all that stuff started coming together. And I was like, man, I missed this. I could have been more effective back then versus now. So that was a nice lesson learned looking back.
I'm really struck by listening to you that at some point in your career, you really became other-focused, that you took lessons in the type of leadership model you wanted to own and be known for. Your legacy, of your leadership legacy, would be the person that made other people better. And I'm not using labels. I'm not calling that a particular type of leadership model. We could call that servant leadership. We could also take a page from Cousins and Posner and say that one of the things that I think Barry and Jim really uphold and talk to us about as leaders is, how do people around you be them very best selves? And I was really quite moved listening to you, because I was really struck by that you're wired to make the people around you better, and that's where your personal satisfaction is.
Yeah, it is, and you're right. Servant leadership is something that I didn't know that's what I was participating in until one day it hit me, and it's like, and ultimately that's the connection with FedEx. I mean, it's not to be trivial about it, but just keep it as simple as we can. It's service, right? And that's what servant leadership. It's servicing others, and From a true leadership perspective, it's creating a vision and then rolling up the sleeves and getting in and working with the team and supporting the team. And in some cases, you got to get out of their way because they're doing what they need to do. And I think that's sort of what has culminated through my career and where I'm at now. Is I got to spend a lot of my time getting out of my team's way. Growing up in the business and being hands-on and understanding it from the ground level up. Sometimes can be a hindrance, to a leader like myself, because you always want to go solve the problem, but the team is solving the problems. And that's the really interesting part about that. And servant leadership, obviously, is a key component. And like I said, doing good things for other people is ultimately the core value of what FedEx is all about. Matter of fact, our purpose statement is connecting people and possibilities around the world. And that's what Fred laid out for the company many, many years ago. And that's the true testament, I think, of what we represent and why it's such a passionate connection, and what motivates our team members and myself, to be a part of this organization is because of that very thing.
Mm-hmm. It's really softened you. My guess is early in your career, you probably were a pretty hard driver and the guy that saw the problem and said, y'all need to fix that. How come that's not fixed yet? To flipping it around a little bit, saying, what do you see? What do you think is the problem? This is what I see, but what do you see? What's the best way? Being a little bit more of, I would call, inquiring, being a little bit more of encouraging people to take the responsibility for solving their own damn problems. Versus being the person that often the image we have as initially as executives is, follow me, I know what to do. And it's a big shift to go from follow me, I know what to do, of here's the North Star, how are we going to get there? Mm-hmm. And having that be a inquiry to put other minds to work in pursuit of answering that question.
Yeah, that's part of the development of others. It's the teaching and educating along the way. And that's one of the values of the career I've had, is that, learning it from the ground up. So you have that credibility. So when you are teaching and coaching, even through a complex problem that I don't have the answer to, but with the team members, we're working through that complex problem, and we all come to the right conclusion. But a lot of that has to do with credibility, and particularly when you're doing hard things, whether it's a organizational restructuring or things of that nature, having gone through it and understand it and being in the seats of the people who are being impacted, I have a sense of responsibility to making sure we do it right and do it right for the team members. So it's something, there's a trust there that's created over time, and in the way you approach it from a leadership standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Switch tracks again. As we owe you, academia, I'll say on behalf of academia, we owe FedEx giving you a diverse pool of talent to solve your human capital needs of tomorrow. So put me on the spot here. What does academia need to do better to develop a larger pool of qualified and diverse talents and skills that for the next wave of innovation and disruption in shipping, logistic, and operations?
Well, actually, we're just talking to the dean about this at lunch. We touched on it already a little bit. I think the subject matter expertise and the actual content of a marketing and finance, you guys do that incredibly well. It's going to come back to, I think, and a lot of it has to do with society and the changes in the way people respond and react, technology. It's back to that soft skill and that ability to connect with people. And it's one of the reasons why I'm really interested, and I'm just enjoy being here today. I feel honored to be here today, by the way. But talking about leadership and what it takes to be a good leader, and that engagement and that personal side, I think is something that I think just in the natural environment of our society, we're losing that because of technology. It's how do we teach that? How do we promote that? And it's not just a class you can take and that's it, you figure it out. It's this reoccurring activity that we need to somehow figure out how we make it happen, and that connection between I'll say corporations and academia and how we connect. To me, that needs to be something we explore. So.
Is it fair to say that in an average diverse class of where I've got international students from all over the world, I've got also the kids who've grown up right here in Ohio, homegrown Ohio talent, that it is the ability to work together across diverse cultures. It's able to understand that what the needs are for a particular business. What a shopkeeper needs in, say, Mansfield, Ohio, may or may not be exactly what a shop needs in Kuala Lumpur. And because I know you deliver to those locations, because I had something delivered to my hotel in Dubai last week from FedEx, I know that the tangle of just an international world is on the one hand simple because I can order something from a shopkeeper in the Lake District of England, but there's tariffs, there's regulations, there is how you pay for the carbon tax, there is sustainability in boxes, there are labor rates, there is how you get it to that last mile. There's a boatload of complexity, even while our distance barriers are lowered because of technology. Is it fair to say that the soft skills that some of the soft skills that you're looking for is to understand the impact of technology, and at the same time, we work together, not because we're on a keyboard, we work together because we know something about being in one another's shoes?
Yeah, I think you nailed it, and a lot of it really has to do with it's about the team, and it's about being committed to the organization, being committed to a purpose, and I think it's one of the things that FedEx has done quite well over the years. Is, like we talked about this already, that people internal employee motivation to do those good things and provide an on-time service delivery or a great experience for the consumer. It's having that ability to be able to relate that and bring it together, I think is the challenge that we all have. And you're right. Technology is a big part of everything that's transforming, the industry and our business, and particularly our company. And how do you explain, or how do you teach and coach that and make that connection, and how you use technologies to its advantage to help the business and to help continue strengthening the culture, I think is important. So yeah.
Powerful. Thank you.
Thanks again for listening. This podcast is presented by the Max M. Fisher College of Business at The Ohio State University. For more episodes, find us on Apple, Google, or podcast.osu.edu/leadership initiative. See you next time.